All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome back to SJW Gone Wild, the now bi-monthly podcast where me, that's APHY fan, Crazy Logic, say hi, Crazy,
Hi.
and Calvin, say hi, Calvin,
Hi, Calvin.
are going to be looking at the crazy, wacky, wide world of SJWs. So apparently there was a doozy found right before the podcast started.
I'm going to save that one for last.
You are?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm fighting with now is trying to get the link out to everybody. You guys should be able to go ahead and spread your links around. But let's get started, okay?
Alright, am I screen sharing for you guys?
If you would.
Alright, I am screen sharing. You just have to make me the one presenting.
Okay, hold on.
Also, apologies if you hear the two dogs in the background, everyone.
It's okay. It's not like anyone hates dogs, right? Or are dogs triggering too now?
Well, some people are triggered by dogs.
True. Alright, so what's this first one? Go ahead and read it out.
Alright, so this first one, I really need to work on not using ableist language as much. It's actually a really big problem. I call people out when they use it, but I continue to use the words dumb, lame, both of which are censored in this post, and other ableist slurs. I have pretty much eliminated the R word from my use, but other than that, I'm really problematic. I mean, this person is free to censor their own language as much as they want. However, them calling people out is fairly annoying, especially considering that most people, A, don't realize why dumb is supposedly ableist. Most of them think it's an intelligence-based thing rather than it's actually being unable to speak for yourself. And, I guess the equestrian world is really ableist, but my main issue is with why bother censoring the words in the post, other than to make yourself feel better?
Because they seem to think that censoring themselves makes them a good person.
Yeah, but honestly, it doesn't completely. Alright, so Mark, you got anything to say? Or Calvin?
Well, just the same comment that I would make anyway about the control of language and how there's a real need to manipulate people's ability to communicate with anyone that's seeking some type of authoritarian system. Whether that authoritarian system is built on well-meant intentions or non-well-meant intentions. And I'll be honest with you, no authoritarian system is ever built on anything other than good intentions. So this is just an example of somebody self-regulating their communication based on some outside source of authority telling them that they have to. I mean, I really don't understand what the D or L words could mean other than dumb and lame. And even if you understand the linguistic roots of these words, their history, their historical use in language, and their many different systems of definition, you still come out with any logical person would come out with the understanding that these words are completely innocuous. So that's my 2 cents on anything that we're going to come up with language.
Okay, so just so we're all aware, today is actually on physical disability and the control of language. So that's why we pulled this up, and I put us forward into the first example just so I could have something to pull off of. The one word that annoys me, and I will never ever tell someone to not say it, but the one word that annoys me more than anything is the concept of problematic. As if words themselves and not the way they're used are problematic. So today we're going to be talking about physical disability and how people just seem to be unable to accept that words are not blanket insults. And so that's just why I wanted to start us off with. So next up,
All right.
Crazy.
All right. Excuse me, but disabled, quote unquote, is an extremely problematic and derogatory term. Non-abled is strongly preferred and is more consistent with non-thin and non-white.
Okay. So again, we have the term problematic here, which means anything I don't agree with. And then they decide that they're going to rewrite entire words. It's no longer disabled, it's non-abled, as in you have no ability. That's a much better word, don't you guys think?
Yeah, disabled more implies that you're at a disadvantage, not that you're not able to do things.
But non-abled means that you can't do anything. So the root dis, like discourage or discussioned or dissatisfied, that implies a negative, yes, a negative association with the following root. So it's not abled, it's isn't as abled, as much as we would say, discriminated, not as criminated, or not as represented. So then we're taking and replacing the word dis, we're replacing that little root dis with non. Well, non means not. It means can't. It means in no way, shape, or form is this going to come up, or will this make sense? So a non-example is an example that has no root at all in reality, where a dis example would be an example that is not as good as others, or not as capable as others. So this extremely problematic and derogatory term actually means what it's being said it means in language, in English. And the new word that this person came up with, non-abled, is far more problematic, if you look at it critically, than the word they're trying to replace it with. And then the reason why they're replacing with this is actually explained here. They're saying it's problematic, but they don't give any source for why disabled is problematic. You see, the real reason why that they're replacing problematic is that they want it to be non-thin and non-white. They want it to meet out with their current SJW language. And if it does, because disabled doesn't really click and roll off the tongue with the rest of their feminist language. So they need to create a new term that kind of continues on with their language so that they have more buzzwords. It's all about the control of buzzwords. It's all about the control of language. It has absolutely nothing to do with making people feel better. If it was actually about making people feel better, then you wouldn't be changing terminology that is used to describe people that might actually have problems remembering and being consistent with using terminology.
I also want to point out that Mr. Robert Stoll in our chat room is saying the funny thing about bleeping something is that it really doesn't get rid of the sentiment. There's nothing different between the word fuck and the word F***. Problematic also is a passive swipe. That's kind of why it's annoying. Anything to say to that?
I completely agree. Anytime that you replace curse words with their non-curse word derivatives, you're just merely saying the curse word without actually using the curse word. The only context where I would say that that's not as true is when someone is replacing the curse word with an attempt to say that you shouldn't use this language. For example, if you were in school and there was a list of words that the teachers would prefer that you not say. Or if you were in a workplace environment and there was a list of words that the boss would prefer that you not say in a professional setting, they may censor the words, and that's the only context wherein they're censoring the words to meet out the rule that they're already stating. For example, please don't use the F word, right? We all know what the F word means. He's not using the F word in his context. He's just using, don't use this word, this noun or verb. And if you do, there might be consequences if you do. So, for example, don't say fuck or you'll be fucked. I mean, that's the only example where both of those types of situations would come up. As for problematic, it's a new curse word. It really is. Anything that is problematic in their terminology is just something that they either disagree with or they can't find any way to rationalize around it. And though problematic has reached mainstream usage.
Your fave is problematic. Your fave is always problematic.
Yeah.
Everything in the fucking world is problematic.
Apparently, and what you're really saying when something is problematic, you're using their social justice language, which I'm going to dip into when I start talking about my topic. But the usage of the word problematic comes all the way back to the late 1800s. I mean, that word is that old, and so there's a lot of history with this word, and it's a lot of history that people don't know because it's largely forgotten and it wasn't recorded. So you have to do a lot of digging for it. So I'll leave that to my discussion later on.
All right. But yeah, I just want to point out, again, I have autism. I have learning disabilities. As far as the United States government is concerned, I am legally disabled. However, this does not mean I am not able to learn. It does not mean I am unable to do anything. It's just more difficult for me. Or it's harder for me to wrap my head around some things. So I'm not abled. So I'm not abled?
Apparently. And then
Yeah.
speaking specifically about physical ability, somebody who is, just because somebody doesn't have legs doesn't mean they can't move. So telling them that they're a non-walker, no, they can move. They're non-transportive, right? We're going to try to create as many creative words as possible. The funny thing about this is the word disabled actually comes into popular usage about the 1970s, and the reason why it became popular was because they wanted to replace the word lame and the word dumb and the word mute with a catch-all term that wasn't as critical to the people that they're talking about. Literally, this is a social justice warrior word that's being replaced by social justice warriors because at this point it's no longer popular. It's not vogue to use disabled anymore because now disabled actually means the thing it's supposed to mean, and that means that the SJWs can't use it.
Yeah.
So what essentially the social justice warriors are doing is they're using the term to mean something higher than what the word actually means, or the idea actually is. So, for example, we can't say lame about people who can't walk because that is telling people who can't walk that they can't walk. So we want to give them a positive word that they can rally around. So let's call them disabled. They're just disabled, right? So they're not. So we're completely erasing the identity of these people and their inability to walk, right? We're completely ignoring the fact that they can't walk. We're ignoring their entire life experience. We're ignoring, which is something critical to social justice warrior ideology. They're erasing these people's identity and replacing their reality and their experiences because to the social justice warrior, it hurts to think that these people have to go through these things. So we're going to replace the word lame with disabled. And so when common usage of the word disabled reaches a point when it actually means what it means, right, what it's supposed to mean, a person that can't walk, then they have to find a new term because the new term has to be higher than the idea that's supposed to represent. And as its common usage comes back down to reality, they'll find another word. And then you see this over and over again with every kind of buzzword that they come up with. The moment it reaches the point where it's actually meaning what the idea represents is the moment they have to create a new word because they can't possibly deal with the idea that there's somebody out there that can't walk. And that's just a sick and disgusting thought, that there are people out there that are claiming to represent people with disadvantages, physical disadvantages, and they're not able to think about those things because it makes them feel bad. Well, I don't want, if I'm going to a bank, right, because I'm broke, and I want the person at the bank to help me out because I'm chronically broke, and the person at the bank can't say that I'm broke, they can't say that I don't have any money, they can't say that I don't have anything in my account. They have to create words around the idea that I don't have any money or my lack of money, right? They call me money enabled or green wishful, right? They can't use the term for the actual problem that I have. They have to create nebulous ideas around it, because to them the idea that I'm bankrupt is so bad that it makes them hurt inside. Well, fuck you. I'm coming to you to represent me and my problems. I'm not coming to you to make me feel better about my problems. And I'm certainly not coming to you so that you can feel better about my situation, right? So let's actually use the words for what they actually mean. I'm done ranting.
All right.
All right, so next one.
All right. Last episode we did go over the spoon theory, right? Because this one.
We did go over spoon theory to a degree, as far as I saw, but we didn't. I don't think we related it very well to physical disabilities.
Well, why don't we go ahead and go over it one more time? Do you want to take the charge here, Tracy?
Sure. Spoon theory is basically, in a nutshell, it's you have a limited amount of energy in the day to do things, and if you run out of energy, you run out of spoons, which has to do with the metaphor for the energy, and you cannot do anything else in the day. There are things that take away your spoons, there are things that recharge your spoons, and so basically it started off as a really good metaphor for somebody made for living with lupus and how difficult some days can be, but it's kind of been taken over for people just saying, I don't want to do this, I don't have enough spoons, as an excuse. There's still legitimate uses to do it, but this I found in the ableism tag. Exercise will make you feel better, in quotes. My dad, when I told him I don't have the spoons to do gym without an accommodation. So, one, exercise does make you feel better. When I started working on a horse ranch, I started feeling better almost daily. Even though I'd come back completely physically exhausted some days, I still have a lot more energy than I used to when I just sat around. It's not ableist to imply that actually getting up and moving or finding a way to move even if you can't get up will make you feel better. It also seems to sound like that this person just doesn't want to do gym class.
Well, without the context of this person and understanding their background, I'm going to have to agree that the statement that he's making here with this image, it does imply that he doesn't. He's the thought of going to the gym, right?
It's gym class.
Or is it gym class? The thought of attending gym class makes him feel so bad, right? And he has to overcome the inertia, right? That he, to actually commit to gym class, which is something that I have ADD, so that's something I understand. But he has to do it with an accommodation, and that's not because of some kind of social structure. That's just because he doesn't feel like he's being provided something. And I have to say, unless he's living in a second world country where those kind of accommodations don't exist or can't exist for financial reasons, I doubt that he's not going to be able to receive a accommodation when he goes to gym. He's just really just saying, I don't want to go to gym, is what he's saying. And his excuse for that is twofold. First, I don't have the energy, right? I don't have the physical energy to try to enjoy gym. And I don't have that physical, I won't find that enjoyment because they can't accommodate me. Well, both of those statements are false. If he does go to gym, he will probably, and he asks for accommodation, they will give him accommodation. It's law in the United States. I don't know what country he's in, but I'm going to assume that he's American, because only an American can be this entitled. And then
maybe some people in the UK.
Possibly, but I'm not going to push that on another nationality. I only disparage my own. And then if when he does receive that accommodation and he starts performing the work that these teachers, then they are teachers, these professors of physical education instruct him on, he'll find that they are trying to pursue his betterment. They're trying to pursue his better activity. And as he works through, I'm going to assume that he's probably as physically incapable as I can think of in this example. He'll find that what limited exercise he can exert is going to make him feel better, because physiologically your body responds with physical activity with with mental reinforcement. So it may be subconscious and chemical, but those two things together are far more effective than just simple mind thought. The moment you start running, you start feeling better all around about yourself because you're running, and it has nothing to do with you telling yourself that you're enjoying anything, and it has everything to do with the fact that your body is releasing chemicals and your subconscious is feeding off the fact that you're exerting yourself, and both of those two things are feedbacking on each other. So he may not be able to run, he may not be able to climb, and he may not be able to throw a baseball or something, but he can do something. Unless he is completely and physically paralyzed, right?
In which case, gym wouldn't even be an option.
In which case, he wouldn't even be in school. He would be in a hospital, being taken care of 24/7 by nurses who are trying to, keep him physically capable and keep him physically alive. We're going to assume that he's going to school and he's as capable as to go to school as possible.
Well, even a paraplegic.
Whining about his.
Well, I'm saying in the United States, if you're a paraplegic, you're not going to do gym class. This kid could at least move.
Right.
Which means it's a lesser disability or some form of chronic illness, and if it's chronic illness, yeah, exercise definitely will make you feel better.
Right. To anybody that's listening, I don't even know how many people are listening, but to those of you listening, the three of us together, we're not at all ignoring the physical incapabilities of people, and we're not at all disparaging people's positions in life. We know plenty of people in our own lives that are incapable in some way, shape, or form. It's the mentality behind it. If you think of yourself as disabled or incapable of something, it doesn't matter what it is. So long as you think yourself incapable of it, you're never going to achieve it. No one has ever won the lottery by thinking that they couldn't win. I mean, that's an extreme example, but it's true. Nobody ever bought a lottery ticket thinking that it was useless.
Indeed. And when you do think it's useless, you don't buy the lottery ticket.
Right. So the chances of winning the lottery may be super extreme. But that just means there's a lot of people who thought that they were going to win and they didn't. But isn't it better to have tried than to have never tried at all? I mean,
well, it depends on whether or not you're a gambling addict, really.
Right. So let's change the metaphor a little bit. So no one has ever run a marathon. No one has ever run cross-country marathons while believing that they couldn't run, or could even step, or could even put on their shoes, right? No one's ever done anything significant without believing that they could do it first. And so the first step of ever trying to achieve anything is believing at some portion of your mind that it may not be attainable, but it's certainly possible, right? So did the United States go to the moon while believing that it was impossible? No. We used our knowledge to know that it was attainable to go to the moon, to inform our decisions and inform our behavior in the ways that we constructed craft. And that if at any point the people in power at NASA believed that it was unattainable, we wouldn't have never done it. So just because you can't do something where you're at now doesn't mean you can't ever do it in the future. If you believe that it's attainable, it probably is.
Here's the thing. I have a friend who is physically disabled. I'm not going to name him, but he is one of my closest friends, and he does everything he does to spite his disability. He does it to make sure that his disability doesn't keep him down. So to see someone who is honestly sitting there and telling his dad, I don't have the spoons to do gym, which is a legitimate way of looking at it. I just don't have the energy. This physically drains me without accommodation. For him to sit there and whine about it on Tumblr when his dad is telling him a legitimate truth that that exercising is going to make you feel better and it's going to make your spoons expand is, well, to use a term that I don't like to use, it's problematic. It's dumb. It's just straight out dumb for you to go out to Tumblr and whine that your father is giving you life advice. Admittedly, it's not life advice that comes from maybe a place of understanding how much it hurts, but he also knows what's best for you, and he only wants what's best for you. Well, anyway, you guys have talked this into the ground.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say, besides, even if you're not gonna be out of spoons to not be able to do gym every time you've got gym class. You'll have it sometimes when you've got to do gym class, but not every single time, because that's not how spoons work.
And talking about a different aspect of the spoon theory, something that spoon theory allows for is an excuse that you don't have to do something that you don't have the energy to do. And the truth about life is that the moment when you have expectations on you and responsibilities that you've created for yourself is the moment that you need to start doing things for yourself that you don't feel like you're ever going to have the energy to do. For example, no one in the United States of America wants to pay their taxes, and I assure you that none of them have the spoons to do it when they have to. But the idea of the consequences for not performing your taxes surely will prompt you to perform them, otherwise you're going to jail. So no one in America has the spoons to do with taxes, yet somehow all of them do. And what does that tell you about spoon theory? Well, that it's just an idea for you to help regulate your life. It is certainly not a life code for you to live by. And it's certainly not a religious dogma for you to spat at other people when you don't feel like you want to do something. I'll get off my soapbox.
It's all right. This partially exists so we can be soapboxing. So here's the next example. Also, I went to the Panera Bread Company in St. Louis, and you have to use a code to use the bathroom? 3 question marks. Why do social justice warriors do that anyways with the multiple question marks?
I guess it's supposed to be... It's supposed to be showing more, more confusion than would normally be indicated by a question mark.
True.
Just go with it.
It's triple question marked. They are furiously question marking.
Yeah. In caps, this is really awful, and I don't like it, and I hope it's not at all locations, because that's honestly ableist against people who have things like Crohn's and IBS. And presumably diarrhea.
I mean, don't you get the code on the bottom of your order slip?
I don't know.
Depends on the location, and also most of the time the reason why they have the codes is not because of the company, but because of the landlord that the company is renting the space from.
Right. So let me talk straight at the person here. If somebody who has irritable bowel syndrome is going to Panera Bread and they need a code, they should probably pre-ask for the code, because, and this is something I find frustrating with people who are social justice warriors who are talking about all these various types of problematic things that they should be concerned about, and it's something I've run into a lot in my job. The thing is, if you know there's a possibility that your disability is going to get in the way, you plan for it. Okay, you plan on how to make sure that your that your disability is not going to get in the way, and that is called being personally responsible. My grandfather's allergic to walnuts. You know what he doesn't do? He doesn't yell every time someone puts a walnut within reach of him. He doesn't eat the walnut, and if he eats the walnut, he feels sick, and he accepts that. He asks if somebody's baked something if there's walnuts in it. I mean, there is a level of personal responsibility that a person with disability has to take, okay? And for me, as someone who knows other people who suffer from irritable bowel syndrome, the answer to this question is you ask. You just ask. You say, hey, look, I need to have the bathroom code ahead of time because blah. and you're informed, and you're informed about what's in your food, and you're informed in this. And it's the same thing with people with severe peanut allergies who, who don't go near people eating peanut butter. I mean, there's a level of, if it gets so severe they can't even have it in the room because it causes problems, well, yes, it's understandable that other people accommodate for them. But IBS is not that level. IBS is something that is unfortunate. It's painful. It hurts, but it's something you can plan for. It's not very nice to have to plan for it. It's a sad thing that you do have to plan for it. But the answer to this question is simply, if you have IBS and you're going to this particular Panera Bread, you would have planned for this. You would know the bathroom has codes. Or you wouldn't.
How much?
No, or you wouldn't. And you shit your pants. And then you learn.
Or, you ask the people with the cash register, hey, can I have the code? And most of the time they go, yeah, here, have the code.
Right.
Exactly.
So, I mean, the only situation where this would be, this would cause a problem for anybody is in the case where the code couldn't be delivered on time and you were surprised by the fact that the code existed. But it's not like there's no precedent for people being unable to use the bathroom at some place because that bathroom was somehow restricted. Your best example for this would be gas stations, where you have to. Many gas stations, especially gas stations in rural places, they require that you have, they have a key on the door to the bathroom, and they do this so that they can protect the bathroom, right? They want the bathroom to be somehow maintained and regulated because they don't have the oversight to make sure that the people coming into the gas station are going to treat their bathroom well. So, similar situation with Panera Bread here. I imagine it's not Panera Bread's decision, but the decision of the owner of the complex was that in order to maintain the bathroom, right, there's so many people using the bathroom improperly and destroying it as property that they need to control the number of people that can go into the bathroom and who has access to it. And honestly, that's more important to them than the random odd person who needs to use the bathroom so fast that that they can't put the code inside. So this give and take of a person's value is somehow going to be judged over the value of property and blah 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 blah. That's all a thought process generated from a social justice assumption that people aren't valuable, right? That's the only reason they're going to bring up the question. They somehow believe that people are invaluable, and that because they believe that people believe that other. Yeah, I'm getting. My goodness, the induction in social justice warrior thought is it hurts my brain. But the way that they just kind of assume that no one likes people, that nobody appreciates people, that no one values people, and therefore we have to constantly talk and remind people how much other people are important. Fuck you, right? How fuck you to assume that I don't care about other people. I care a lot about other people. And I want to make sure when they go to the bathroom, the place doesn't smell like shit, and the toilet works, the sink is operating, and the toilet dispenser isn't on the ground. And because I want that, I'm forced to have to make sure the bathroom is only accessible to people with a code.
Or with a key.
And here's the thing. There's other places in the U.S. where it's not a key or a code, but you aren't allowed in that bathroom until you've bought something. Is that ableist? Because I can tell you the number of times I've rushed into a gas station on a long trip and I've gone, I need to use the bathroom now because I've got a UTI and my bladder's not going to weigh, and they go, buy something first. The number of times I've had to do that, are they being ableist against UTIs now? Is that how this works? Because, yeah, we've got to be careful about this.
Well, I seriously doubt you'd tell the guy that you have a UTI.
No, if I'm that desperate, I will tell them exactly what's going on.
Well, in that situation, the problem with words like ableism is that the definition of those words is controlled by the elite clergy of feminism, and so yes, they will define what ableism means, and the definition is going to change based on their whim. If they feel that the word ableism isn't serving their purposes, they'll change the definition to being something else.
Oh boy, did we just pretend there's an elite clergy of the women who just want to whine about their own problems?
That's not a pretend.
I'm sorry.
I'm not pretending anything. There is a clergy of feminists. They do exist.
Putting on my tinfoil hat. All right, fair enough. There are people who are leaders within the feminist movement, but I'm just saying that let's remind ourselves not to get too wrapped up in that feminist cause everything, because clearly this is bigger than feminism, and feminism is a symptom of a larger problem of entitlement and stupidity. And apparently gender issues.
I have to disagree. I believe that feminism is the cause of all the world's problems. I mean, just this morning I woke up and I stubbed my toe, and surely I looked around and saw that the wall had just recently been constructed, well, not by a feminist, but by a man that was paid by a feminist. So...
You slept so heavily that somebody managed to construct a wall in a night without you noticing it?
That's right, and I highly suspect that I was drugged the night before.
Oh boy, okay, moving on.
Alright. I'm trying to imagine the other ice bucket challenge types of things for other disabilities. Stab yourself with 1,000 needles concentrated around these tender points for fibromyalgia.
Fibromyalgia. Yep.
I'm dyslexic, you ableist scum.
So am I, and I can say it.
Run a marathon and then just stand totally motionless without water for... I'm not even going to try that one.
Okay, hold on. I can do this. I went to school for this kind of stuff. Dysautonomia.
Now try to say it 5 times fast.
Dysautonomia.
You still stumbled over it.
I know.
But,
I stumble over everything. I've got a stutter, you shitlord.
In any case, the Ice Bucket Challenge did not cause physical pain to people with ALS. It was an awareness thing actually started by somebody with Lou Gehrig's disease among his group of friends. They just all happened to be college football players, so it kind of spread around the school, then spread to the rival school, then spread to the NFL, and that's how it went viral.
Yeah, let's be perfectly honest. It's not meant to mimic ALS, or at least it's not meant to mimic ALS on a...
It doesn't even.
Yeah, it doesn't even. It's not meant to. It's meant to be funny. Having people have ice buckets dropped on their head is funny. Guys, a cigar is just a cigar. It's just really funny to watch people shivering in cold when they've induced it on themselves for a good cause. It's called having a sense of humor.
Yeah, I had a horse behind me when I did mine because I did it in front of the paddock, and he was watching me like, what are you doing?
I did not do it because I just donated the money.
Well, that means you broke the chain.
I know.
What other people forgot.
Nobody ever did it for me. I just donated the money because I figured it was a good idea.
Aw.
I don't have any friends who want to do that kind of thing.
You've got boring friends. But what a lot of people also forgot about the Ice Bucket Challenge was it wasn't dump it over your head or donate. It was dump it over your head and donate like $5, or dump it or not do it, break the chain and donate 100. You donated either way.
Mhm. You just broke up there, Mark.
Or Calvin.
So, what this tells me, I don't even know why we're talking about the Ice Bucket Challenge, it's so old, but there's an expectation that you're going to donate or you're going to donate. So what about the people that can't afford to donate?
Well, then they just make a funny little thing.
Right, but...
And they donate at some later date when they can.
What if nobody...
But you don't... But you basically, when you when you do the Ice Bucket Challenge and dump it on your head, you can donate as little as $1.
But what if people don't even care to donate? Like, what if they have the money, they just don't care?
Then those people are assholes, but no one would know.
Okay. So here we're creating new and interesting, funny things. I think it would be hilarious to stab people with thousands of needles, right? I want to see them stab themselves with thousands of needles because that would be funny. But let's not do that for fibromyalgia, right? I mean, there's a level of self-deprecating humor where we're doing something because we're rallying behind a cause and it's funny and it's fun. And then there's this where I think the intent was humor here, but it's also kind of like, it's also very, it's a very cynical humor. Where I agree, the ice bucket challenge was stupid, but are you really are you really trying to create jimmies around it for fibromyalgia and dysautonomia? I mean,
Honestly, it was the first contact I had with my brother after almost a year of not talking to him because I just wanted to see him dump a bucket of ice over his head.
right. So we're disparaging the ice bucket challenge because it's not wide enough, I guess, is one way of looking at this statement. Anyway, I think we've talked this one down.
Okay.
You've put it in the ground too, beside the others.
Yep.
Yeah. Oops,
Continuing.
I accidentally stopped screen sharing there.
Well, you're still
Presenting, I know.
presenting, so I'm going to stop you and I'm going to let you present and go ahead and screen share.
Yeah. I just accidentally clicked the stop sharing button. Hi, hello. I would just like to point out lame is an ableist slur. I changed it. Sorry, I couldn't find the original post. However, again, this is such language policing. But also, I'd like to point out that if lame was an ableist slur, then all of the equestrian world would be ableist as fuck, because we use that word all the time to describe horses when they get a limp.
Yes, we are talking about equestrian as in the actual sport, not equestria as in the My Little Pony. It took me a second to realize that when she first mentioned it.
Yeah, equestrian is the pretentious way of saying works with horses, rides horses, trains horses, has a horse that they pet once in a while. Basically involved in the horse world. And there, lame is given its old definition of not that it's boring, it's literally the horse cannot walk correctly. Therefore, we need to give it stall rest, we need to not ride it for a while, we need to
put it down.
Very often we actually go and see the vet before we go to that step. Put it down is only if if it's an obvious broken leg.
That's right. Our first decision made when we see an animal that is unable to move is to immediately kill it. That is our first assumption.
Yeah,
we certainly don't reach a point where we would want medical attention.
Most of the time when we say this horse is lame, the horse actually just woke up stiff and needs to stretch a little bit.
Wait a minute. I'm not saying that the horse would be automatically put down, but that is one of the things you do when it's a clearly broken leg. I've worked with horses too.
I know.
And you were going up the totem pole there. So I went to the very end because I wanted to kind of push you along. That's all.
Yes. Sorry. But
so this one's lame and we're putting it in the ground.
Yep. I mean, this is dumb. We're putting it down.
It's just an example of the language policing that happens and the fact that people just lie down and take it on Tumblr.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, who is anonymous, and why do we care about their opinion?
Right.
And I think anonymous is the dumbest person that's ever existed, because the amount of dribble and self-contradictory statements that anonymous makes.
It's just great. Just so you're aware, I have shot this, so we're now beating a dead post.
This one, I'm not really sure how it's ableist, so I'm just like
Well, the message here is the person that this is being taken from, the person that this is captured from, right? He changed whatever post he made. Anonymous was just telling him, you can't use the word lame. So he said his response to the question being asked by Anonymous was, yeah, I've already fixed it.
No, yeah. I mean, hashtag reading comprehension 010 par usual, I guess, and then under it says nice ableism. So,
it's just the word ableism has now become meaningless.
And that's what happens when you've broadened the scope of a definition so big. It eventually loses all of its meaning. Here we see that ableism doesn't mean, an idea or a context in which somebody is being prejudiced against for their inability to do something, right? Here we see its use being made as a statement about someone's action in making a snarky comment. Well, snarky comments are not prejudiced against anybody.
Yeah, and ironically, they misspelled a word in the thing, but yeah, and not to mention, disability is based off of an inherent ability. Reading comprehension is very much a learned skill.
It is.
There might be somebody who is unable to read because of their lack of eyes, but, then they usually, I would assume that in America, the
They'd
public
learn
education,
Braille. They'd learn another form of reading.
the American education system would enforce that they had to learn Braille instead. So,
Yeah.
See, here's my thing about this. I'm great at reading comprehension. Does that mean I'm ableist when I point out that somebody who reads too quickly and skips over things doesn't totally understand everything? Because if that is, then I do that all the time. I find it super annoying when people skim read and don't actually see what I'm typing and then assume things and then go off in their own little world. Or even the listening comprehension where they grab one thing I say and they take a breath, because I take breaths in the middle of my sentences as a pause, and then they insert their new direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
we're creating entire classes of people we're creating disabilities for people who just read fast, or who read, seriously?
Or who are just plain not really paying attention, which is not a disability. That's your own damn fault.
There's
yeah,
nothing
so this is not ableism unless you have a disability that causes you to have low reading comprehension, at which point that can be worked around. Laziness is not a disability, guys. Just making sure you all know this.
Alright, here's the next one.
Oh, geez, this.
Oh, yay, fun to read.
So, I don't know what the article is about, because I found this as a screen cap on Imgur, or however the fuck you pronounce that word.
Imgur, obviously.
Imgur.
That Reddit image hosting site. Awesome article, smiley face, because they just love to use smiley faces. Just wondering, y'all use the word see a lot in your post, as in you see something wrong, and I see these terms everywhere. Would that not be considered ableist as well? So I'm guessing the initial article was on ableism.
Can I read for the everyday feminist, please?
Go.
It totally could be. That's something we've also noticed recently, and we're trying to work on it. So thanks for your pointing that out. Good to know other folks are picking up on these things too.
So then there's 2 bits of sanity.
Oh, yay, sanity.
Yeah, these 3 are sanity, so they're boring, so we're not going to pay attention to them and read them aloud, but you guys are free to read them on your own. But this is just arbitrary at this point. It's another example of how the word is so losing its meaning as a term for discrimination.
Mm-hmm. Let's pause a second and let's have an actual discussion about what ableism truly is, and let's redefine this, and then let's use the word boobliuk for anything else that isn't ableism. Ableism is when you hold a person down purely because
it's an act of
you don't like them because they're disabled.
It's an
like how I was told because I'm autistic I was not going to be trained to work with the customers at a job I had. He literally said that to my face.
Exactly. So
but racism, it's not a thing. It's not an idea. It is the act of somebody who it is a description of an act of performing a discrimination with prejudice against somebody for something.
Or feelings of prejudice, like saying all disabled people should die, or something like that.
Well, is feeling something an action? If you really feel that way, did you choose to feel that way? Can you change how you feel?
That's another debate entirely. That's like an entire podcast in itself.
We should actually put that down.
That's kind of what I mean by these ableist statements. These ableist statements that they're taking people's feelings, their statements, and then they're making them into they're recreating them into the context of being discriminatory in a prejudiced way. Well, they're not. They were never intended to be discriminatory, even if, not even with prejudice. So there's a context here wherein yes, if somebody was like, let's say for example that somebody came to a McDonald's and they were refused service at that McDonald's because they're in a wheelchair. Yes, that's ableism. That is just like you would say if somebody came to a McDonald's and was refused service because they're a gay couple, that would be homoism or something. I don't know.
Homophobia.
Well, homophobia is a fear of a fear of homosexuality. The act of prejudice against somebody because of their sexuality would be genderism. So,
well, sexualism, but yeah, the point being that would be an act of discrimination.
Right, and it's not just discrimination; it's discrimination with prejudice. Now, let's say the same person, the person in a wheelchair, goes to a McDonald's. And they order a cheeseburger, and then they go and they find that none of the tables in their McDonald's have, they all have chairs around them. None of them are open for him to be able to use his wheelchair. Is that ableism? The answer is no, because there's no prejudice involved.
Well, that's still a violation of...
It may be a legal violation.
Yes, it's a legal violation for what you're
can we assume that... Are we really able to assume that the people at the McDonald's intentionally filled all of the tables and chairs around all the tables in order to keep somebody from being able to eat in a restaurant?
No, it's not ableist, but it still is stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid and it's wrong, but it's not prejudiced. So is it ableist? The answer is no.
No, but he can still sue the McDonald's.
Right. So unless there's an act of prejudice behind something, then no prejudicial discrimination has occurred, and therefore the word ableism isn't applied. If you do apply it to instances where somebody is being discriminated against without prejudice, or that just because you want to use it as a buzzword, then you're taking the word out of its context, and the word is losing its meaning, literally. So if everyone is using the word out of its meaning, then the word has lost its meaning and no longer is part of English. It's just a thing, a movement of your vocal cords to stress how much you want to use a buzzword at the moment.
Here's the thing for me. There are points where you can tell a person who doesn't have any legs that he can't go on to something that only holds him in by his legs, and that is legally watching out for his safety.
So there is some roller coasters.
Yeah,
like some roller coasters.
Both me and our host here we both worked for a company. Can we tell them who we worked for? Do you care?
I don't care.
We both worked for Disney, and we both worked for Disney at the Magic Kingdom, and both of us operated the rides. And so both of us received the same training from the same company that informed us that there's a specific type of restriction involved for moving heavy machinery, and maybe the heavy machinery is intended for the fun and all, and yes, the accommodations can be made, but there is a moment when I'm standing at Splash Mountain and I have to look at a veteran of Iraq in the eye, and I have to tell him, I'm sorry, sir, you cannot ride Splash Mountain. You don't have any legs. And I did have to do that, and it hurt a lot, and he was very mad at me, but it was true. Because if he was riding on Splash Mountain and because his legs weren't long enough, what was left of his legs wasn't long enough, then I couldn't risk his life on my ride. I just couldn't. Not in good conscience. I couldn't risk his life. So, no matter how much he believes that he would be able to stay inside that ride, and no matter how much he would wish that he could, and no matter how awesome it would be for him to have that experience, the risk to his life was so big. That it's just too much. It's just too much to expect that he's going to make it through all of that ride, and then the legal team of Disney is going to come back if something were to happen. So yes, it sucks. It really does. But you have to be able to tell people, look, you have to yes, we would try to accommodate you if all possible, but there's no way to accommodate you here. And I don't know how we're even going to relate this back. I think we're so off topic of the actual slide here.
Well, here's the thing. The point I'm trying to make is there's a difference between discriminating for the safety of yourselves, others, and the person you're dealing with, and discriminating because you don't like them.
Right,
that's
and that's what
ableism.
that's what I mean by prejudice. Yes, we're discriminating people based on their height for being able to ride the teacups or something. There actually isn't a height restriction on the teacups, but like for Space Mountain, you can't ride Space Mountain if you are not this tall, and that is discrimination. But there's a difference between discrimination because you want to keep short people from riding something that might be dangerous to them, and then discrimination where you refuse service to somebody who is who could pay for a service because of something that's out of their control. And so the difference here is that there's discrimination based on a set of requirements, and then there's discrimination based on prejudice. And discrimination based on prejudice is illegal in the United States, and it should be. So that's what ableism should mean. When we use the word ableism, we should be talking about the instances when somebody's being refused something or is being judged based on something that is out of their control. And in this example, it would be their inability to do something for any kind of reason, their disability. So the ableism is the belief that a person's ability to do something keeps you from being able to value them as a person, and that's wrong. It's wrong in the United States. It's already covered by the rights of
the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Mm-hmm.
It is covered by that, but it's also covered by the amendment before it, the discrimination amendment that was added following. I want to say it was in 1920 something. It's the Americans with Disability Act is based on that amendment and
it basically
clarifies
Guys.
it. Go ahead.
Guys, I think we've pretty much talked this into the ground. So from now on, whenever they use ableism wrong, we call it goobly-gook. Okay? All right. Ty 2010 is asking, first off, is making fun of feminist ableists? No, because honestly...
As funny as that joke would be, no. As funny as the joke is, no, not at all. And the reason why is that feminism... we are being I know it's I wish I could make that joke, but that would be mean and cruel to all the poor disabled people in the world. Unfortunately, feminists choose to be as stupid as they are, and because of that choice, you can't hold them to the same standard of somebody who is born with an inability to learn. So there are people with the inability to learn that are feminists, but not all feminists are unable to learn, and because of that, we have to assume that some feminists choose not to learn, rather than just being unable to.
Also, we're being told that GTA 5 totally needs wheelchairs. It would be the same mechanic as a shopping cart, but you could get it pimped out and get a powered version based off the golf cart mechanics. I think that would be very cool.
There's actually an all-terrain wheelchair that I showed this group the other day. I wish I could pull it up, but yeah. All-terrain wheelchairs.
Personal transportation in any way, shape, or form that involves any amount of machinery is freaking awesome.
Yes.
I would like a chance, like sometimes you would break your legs, so you have to just like zoom around in a little wheelchair. I totally want that level of realism in my game. All right. Anyway, just wanted.
So here's the post. I'm still against this tactic. Anti-smoking campaigns. Smoking can make you disabled. Anti-smoking campaigns. Can you imagine how horrible that would be? Disabled community. ...
Well, now wait a minute. I think they're talking about those ones, and I admit I hate these particular campaign ads because they gross me out to no end. But it's like the ones where they had the smokers who had a tracheotomy,
or the smoker that, because of a condition caused by smoking, ended up having to have his legs amputated.
Right. Where they're like, make sure that you don't face the shower. They're not saying, can you imagine how horrible that would be? They're explaining a reality of, basically disabling yourself through addiction. And they're trying to wake people up to what's happening.
So are we saying that the idea of thinking about what it would be like to experience somebody's disability and quantifying that experience as being horrible, are we saying that that's somehow ableist? Because
it's horrible to go from being physically able to becoming disabled. It's much more traumatic than being born that way.
Well, even so, I mean, are we telling? Is the community, the disabled community, right? And I really don't think that the disabled community as a whole collective thinks this way. Just these stupid SJWs. But are they really like trying to? Are they really trying to shame people for thinking how horrible it would be to be disabled? Is that really what we're doing here? Are we? Because this smoking campaign is very effective, right? And so the reason why it's so effective is it tells people this, your action A could result in B. Imagine how bad B would be. So they're saying, no, stop. You can't tell people about B because that's triggering to us. Well, screw you. Who are you to say that somebody can or cannot think about something?
Yeah, I actually kind of went through this because my high school had done the assembly, the don't drink and drive assembly, standard one. One of the presenters was somebody who drove drunk, crashed his car, head-on collision, killed the woman in the other car, and was in a coma for 3 weeks. And he suffered brain damage. And he was describing the symptoms of his brain damage, and I was just kind of sitting there like, deal with that already, deal with that already, deal with that already. Because some of my disabilities make I don't have the best fine motor skills. My organization is not up to par. I cannot, at the time, I was having a lot of trouble focusing because of my ADHD. And I was just like, and part of me was just kind of annoyed, mostly through having to sit through the assembly, but really I was just like, well, it was hard for him to adapt to, but just because I'd have to deal with it doesn't mean it wasn't horrifying for him when he suddenly had to adapt to it overnight as an adult, or near adult, instead of having to work on it since they were 8 years old.
And in both sides of that, you can't tell people that they can't frame a reference for something in a way that is going to be understandable to them. You can't tell people that they're not allowed to say that the experience of being disabled is negative, because you want people who are...
Hear that? That's the thought police.
Right. So, yeah, let's move on, because this one's making me angrier and angrier.
But before we move on, I do want to say something. I can understand how it would be like, yeah, okay, I deal with it every day. But at the same time, it is giving you a real view into what it's like. And that's a legitimate way to wake people up. I mean, the one that bothers me the most is about a woman whose child was premature because she smoked and has a lot of things. And more so than the woman with the hole in her throat, so much more so than the man, the thought that she was harming others. And that may be the only way to wake up expectant mothers who are smoking. So I'm not against this tactic. I think it's legitimate, and it's gross and disgusting, and it affronts my senses. But considering what the person is doing not only to her body but to others, I think they need to do that.
Think of the sensibility.
That's a step above think of the children, and we'll talk about that some other time. Continue.
Yes.
We'll get...
All right. This one. Headcanon that Enulores, hopefully I pronounced that right because I don't know French, has to get a prosthetic after a particularly rough protest damages his leg, so he learns all about living with a disability, the healthcare system for people with disabilities, and ablism, and becomes so enraged over the injustice in society that he becomes an advocate for those living with disabilities too. This one I mainly chose because it's basically shows how centric they are to modern day. Because there was no healthcare system whatsoever in the time Les Miserables takes place. And here, if those who haven't seen, is a revolutionary character in the book that leads a second attempt at the... Les Miserables.
Sorry, I'm very French, so I'm going like, arg, this is offensive.
Alright, I'm just going to call it either Les Mis or the Brick.
Go for it.
So he's a character in the book that's very, very revolutionary, all plight of the poor. He's basically a social justice warrior trying to start a second French Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
like, and one of his main flaws in the book is that he's so focused on politics, he's actually not going to his classes, which is cutting off his main path for helping out the people he wants to help, which is getting educated in politics and becoming a politician himself.
Indeed, and actually, he was everything that Victor Hugo thought of as the useless but well-meaning person in the world. He was completely useless to the people he was supposed to be helping because all he managed to do was get them killed. And he could have done so much more if he had worked through the system. And Victor Hugo is notorious for never really having a good and a bad in Les Mis, but he definitely, the way he discusses the way he discusses N is that he really does show that this boy is foolishly naive and needs to get his head out of the clouds long enough to see that he can help people so much better if he stopped pretending he was higher and mightier than everyone around him. So it's kind of funny that he's actually become the poster child for most SJWs who really like Les Mis, because he's the exact, he's the exact opposite of what Victor Hugo thought they needed.
Yeah. To be fair, most of these people are more into it because of the movie, or they saw the musical once, or their high school put on a production. Next to none of them have actually read the book. Very few of them have actually probably have the patience to read that goddamn book.
It would mean devoting time away from posting things on Tumblr.
Yes.
Clearly.
It's also a very difficult book to read, I have to admit.
Also, for those of you who are Badger fans, Badgers are starting currently. We understand we're having a little bit of a clash with them. So if you choose them over us, you can always come back and start right back up where you left off. We understand, or just come in for the first half. We just like to get some talking to you guys. So we understand if you go to the Badgers. They're much better organized generally. So go, go, go.
Well,
it's okay.
They're actually professionals and we're not.
Maybe one day we'll become professionals.
But anyways, another thing that really bugs me is this isn't a headcanon. This is a modern-day alternate universe fan fiction, people.
Why doesn't...
Indeed.
I love it when they write, I'm going to have a headcanon, or an AU where they write out the synopsis of their idea and they post it online, and then why didn't the thought ever occur to them to take the synopsis that they just posted on Tumblr, on a public forum, and privately write the script or write the actual novel around it, and then post that maybe to a publisher?
Well, that would actually require changing names and making your own characters and not plagiarizing, which is very, very difficult for these people.
As a fan fiction writer...
We see how effective just changing names are.
Well, I write fan fiction too, so I'm being a bit harsh.
As a fan fiction writer, I'm going to point out that is a lot more difficult, and if they want to do this, but they shouldn't make it their end goal. And you're right, we see just how much you can do by just changing names. So if you just change names, I mean, you can sell your book. So imagine what happens when you actually write something good and semi-original. What might happen?
I mean, if 50 Shades of Grey can get published, so can you.
Wow, we're really off topic. We need an off
Anyway,
topic.
Moving on. They want him to learn about people with disabilities by becoming disabled, because clearly no one who isn't disabled cannot understand about disabilities. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and also it's not like if he was from a very rich family and came from a life of very good privilege, so he would have had the nice prosthetic with maybe a joint so the heel and ankle could bend a little bit. And he just basically, as far as anyone else was concerned, he was a guy with a limp until he took off his leg. Like, it's basically, you're projecting modern things onto the past. Because honestly, a lot of the problems with disability discrimination are surprisingly modern.
And you know what? That's the problem with most SJWs. You've hit it on your head. They project. They project like mad. They think that they think this way, so therefore everyone else must be thinking this way. And they're better because they caught themselves thinking this way. which that's more holier than thou than most of the people I know in religious communities can get. That's just me.
Mm. So next one, based off of one of Tumblr's ads, the Nike one, embrace your uncomfort zone. Is it just me, or is this slogan really fucking ableist? I mean, if I embrace my quote-unquote uncomfort zone, I get to enjoy a panic attack. If someone with a physical disability embraces their quote-unquote uncomfort zone, they could hurt themselves. As far as I know, quote-unquote uncomfort isn't a fucking word. I try not to be...
I'm sorry, go on. I'll tell you what's so funny in a minute. Just go on.
I try not to be pedantic about the use of the English language on here because there are people from a lot of range of backgrounds, but Nike is a large company and spends a large amount of money on marketing and should know better. And for a bit of sanity, because the next few comments, as usual, I won't read the... As with the last one, I won't read the sanity, but you viewers are free to read it.
Mm-hmm.
So, why'd you laugh, Shield?
Okay, so did that person just call someone out for making up a word?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
Just everyone's got the tasty, delicious actual irony, right? Like,
yes.
I'm not the only one with this irony? Okay.
Unfortunately, my irony was served via an ice bucket, so...
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, like, so here we have an ad from Nike, a company that's dedicated to advertising and selling footwear. And the reason why they would sell footwear, of course, is for people who want to be able to run. So running shoes, right? We're talking about exercise, and we're talking about the exercise and...
They sell other fitness stuff, too.
Right, but they're talking about people who are... This is an advertisement from a fitness company for fitness equipment. And so, of course, this advertising that is petitioning for people to try to get out of their comfort zone and get into fitness is ableist because there are people out there that can't get fit. That's exactly what they're saying.
Here's the thing, though. Like, again, they've, like, if I embrace my uncomfort zone, I get to enjoy a panic attack. That used to be the case for me. But you know what? I just kept going out of my comfort zone a bit more, and a bit more, and a bit more. It's like exercising a muscle. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
Like I was talking with Shield, and we talked about we're talking about general phobias and the inability to experience things, and it came up between us that one of the most powerful things a person can do is to experience something that is going to largely put them in a position of being under some kind of distress. So if you never experience something, its power over you is so much greater than when you actually experience. Yeah, the actual experience may be hell, but until you actually experienced hell, you don't really know what hell means. And the human brain is more likely to build up the potential experience as being something much greater than it actually is, because we don't have any reference for it. And so we want to try to create want to try to surround it with as much risk thought as possible. So for some, riding that roller coaster, it really does seem like it's an insurmountable thing to ride the roller coaster, right? But until you actually ride it, you're going to think it's insurmountable. The moment you do ride it, that was the moment that you've experienced it, and you have some context for what that roller coaster is. So when you go to another roller coaster, right, you might enjoy that one because it's, it may be you already have an experience with a roller coaster, so it'll be easier for you to enjoy it. And the more you build up those experiences, the more context you have for what you're dealing with. So if we're going to think about just getting out of your safe space and how uncomfortable that's going to make you, then you're never going to leave the tiny little room where they drop food from the ceiling.
And keep in mind, a lot of people with physical disabilities do embrace their uncomfort zone a lot. It's called physical therapy, and it's very, very helpful for a lot of them. I used to work volunteer at a physical therapy horseback riding place, and I saw kids go from having to lean on the horse's neck because they couldn't sit up. Over the course of about a year and a half, that girl was eventually sitting up on her own.
We lost we lost Shield, so she's not gonna be in here until she comes back to us. We're gonna go ahead and just move on to the next one then.
All right. I really want a bunch of T-shirts that say things like my. Are we still broadcasting?
Yeah, we are still broadcasting.
Okay, I'm surprised because she's the one in charge of the broadcasting. I really want a bunch of T-shirts that say things like, "My wheelchair is not a conversation starter. Go away. I don't care that you once twisted your ankle. Leave me alone. Just because I'm in a wheelchair does not mean I want to talk to you, and if you try to push my wheelchair without my permission, without my permission, I will run you the fuck over." That last one is completely relevant, and I respect that last one. If you do try to push someone that is in a wheelchair, run over their feet to your heart's delight, because that is not cool. However, who says that who says that their attempts to talk to you are just because you're in a wheelchair? What if they just think your face is pretty?
I think part of it is the assumption that people are coming to you because of your disability, and so they're building around the context for their interactions with other people is entirely based on your disability, which comes with that assumption is just so wrong, right? The world is filled with hundreds of thousands of people who you might interact with. You cannot assume that every single one of them is going to want to interact with you because because your legs don't work. That's just that's such a wall you're building up with other people, and you're building this wall between you and other people because you actually just feel that you just think it's too much work to interact with them. Okay, you know what? That's fair. You're allowed to put yourself in a position where you're going to be lonely for the rest of your life. So, yeah, I understand. Like you can't touch people's wheelchairs. You just can't. You can't. That's part of them. That's part of them physically. You can't touching their wheelchair without permission is just wrong. In the same way that you don't go up and you start groping old ladies, right, on the shoulder because they're old ladies. You don't do that. You don't touch people's physical things. You don't interact. You don't move into their personal space. But trying to start up a conversation is not abusive. And trying to start up a conversation are we really going to reduce human interaction to abuse and harassment?
And honestly, I'll admit, sometimes I will start a conversation based off of somebody's wheelchair, but oftentimes it's because, oh, hey, I like that thing that's related to a sticker you put on the back of your wheelchair.
Right.
And honestly, some wheelchairs are just really fucking cool.
Yeah, that is true. Some people really trick their wheelchairs out or tricked out with their canes or something, and pointing that out to people. Like, nobody ever gets a tattoo on their arm, because they want to keep it private. No one ever puts a bumper sticker on their car because they think that opinion or that statement is somehow personal. People do stuff like that because they want to have an interaction. They want to make a statement in a public space. When they go out in their wheelchair and it's tricked out in flames and it bunny hops, and like when you press a button, a little American flag pops up and it plays a ukulele for you or something. The reason why you did all of that is because you want to be able to go out and show it off.
And honestly, even with the prosthetics that aren't decorated, I will honestly stare at prosthetics because I'm just marveling at the technology. There are prosthetics that allow people to ride horses in them now.
I know, and
that is incredible.
That is incredible.